As I drove through the endless dark road, the engine's steady hum was the only sound that punctuated the thick silence enveloping the car. The air was stifling, the space between me and my husband suffocating with an unspoken tension that I couldn't quite place but had felt simmering for days. We were halfway through an 8-hour road trip, something I had once enjoyed for the open freedom, the time to talk, to reflect, and to reconnect with him. But tonight was different. There was a heaviness, a sense of impending dread that seemed to cling to me like a shadow. As I glanced over at him, catching him bathed in the blue glow of his phone screen, I tried to shake off the unease, telling myself that it was just my overactive mind. But just as I returned my focus to the road, a message flashed on his screen. My gaze caught it, just for a fraction of a second, but the words were like a jolt to my system. They registered instantly, with a clarity that felt like a punch to my gut. I could feel my stomach twist, a sickening knot forming as I tried to process the horror of what I had just read. My heartbeat pounded in my chest, each thud echoing in my head, drowning out the world around me. How could this be happening? My hands gripped the wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white, and every fiber of my being wanted to turn to him and demand answers. But the fear of hearing those answers, of shattering the fragile reality I'd clung to for so long, held me back. The world outside the car seemed to blur as my thoughts spiraled, each one cutting deeper as I pieced together the implications of what I'd seen. The man I'd built a life with, trusted with my dreams, my vulnerabilities, my everything, was hiding a darkness I'd never suspected. I couldn't help but reflect on all the moments that had led us here, the countless days and nights spent side by side, sharing a life that now felt like a lie. My mind raced back to our beginning, how he'd charmed me with his kindness, his unwavering attention, and the gentle way he'd made me feel like the most important person in the world. I had fallen in love with that man, trusted him completely, believed in the promises he'd made. I could almost hear his voice from our wedding day, the vows spoken with such sincerity, his eyes filled with emotion as he promised to be my partner, my protector. And now it all felt hollow, a cruel irony as I faced the possibility that I had never really known him at all. Memories flooded in, snapshots of our life together, our first apartment, the late nights spent talking about our dreams, the quiet mornings when he'd bring me coffee, the little gestures that had made me feel loved, secure. But now each memory felt tainted, as if a dark shadow had cast itself over everything we had shared. Had there been signs that I'd missed, subtle hints that something was wrong? I combed through moments I'd once cherished, now tainted with doubt, wondering if I had ignored red flags, if I'd been too trusting, too naive. There were times he'd been distant, times he'd seemed preoccupied, but I had always assumed it was stress from work, or just the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. Now those moments loomed large in my mind, reframed in the harsh light of this new reality. The car felt like a cage, a confined space trapping me in this waking nightmare, with nowhere to turn, no escape from the truth closing in around me. I could feel anger bubbling beneath the surface, mingling with a deep, aching sadness. The kind of sadness that feels like a hollow space inside, consuming everything in its path. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to demand an explanation that would make sense of the chaos raging within me. But instead I stayed silent, gripping the wheel, forcing myself to breathe, to maintain control. I was 1,000 miles from anywhere familiar, caught in the darkness of this winding road, the only light coming from the distant glow of headlights that passed us by. The silence stretched, thick and unbearable, and I found myself replaying that message over and over in my mind, each word cutting deeper, each one a reminder of the betrayal that had unraveled the foundation of my life. How could he sit there, so calm, so completely unaware of the storm raging beside him? I glanced over at him, trying to reconcile the man I loved with the stranger sitting beside me. The man who had kept this dark secret hidden away, leaving me to discover it in the most callous, accidental way. I considered confronting him, right here, right now, letting the anger and betrayal spill out, demanding that he explain himself. But fear held me back, a fear of what he might say, a fear of finally facing the truth I had glimpsed in that message. And then, a wave of doubt washed over me, a doubt that gnawed at my mind, whispering that maybe I had been a fool, that maybe I had been blind to the reality all along. My thoughts spiraled further, and I felt a profound sense of isolation, a loneliness that pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. I was trapped, not only in this car, but in a life that suddenly felt like a prison, surrounded by walls of deception and betrayal. I found myself wishing for some escape, some way to rewind time, to go back to before I had seen that message, before the weight of this truth had shattered the illusion I'd been living in. The road stretched on, each mile feeling like a lifetime, and with every passing minute, the decision loomed larger. What was I going to do? Could I confront him, or would I turn a blind eye, pretend I hadn't seen it, cling to the life we had built, however fragile it now seemed? I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes, a wave of sorrow crashing over me as I thought of the life we'd planned, the dreams we'd shared, all now tainted by this revelation. There were so many questions swirling in my mind, questions I was afraid to ask but knew I couldn't avoid forever. How long had this been going on? Was I the only one he had deceived? Or were there others who knew, others who had been complicit in the lie that was our life? And yet, as the anger rose, mingling with the hurt and the betrayal, I felt a resolve hardening within me, a determination to take control of my own future, to decide what kind of life I wanted, whether or not he would be a part of it. I realized in that moment that I couldn't keep driving in silence, couldn't continue pretending that everything was okay. I needed answers, even if those answers would tear apart the life I had known. I took a deep, shaky breath, bracing myself for the confrontation that lay ahead, for the words that would forever change the course of our relationship. My hands gripped the wheel, my pulse racing as I turned to him, feeling a surge of courage mixed with dread. And as I opened my mouth to speak, the weight of everything I had held back flooded forward, a torrent of emotions I could no longer contain. This was it, the moment I would finally demand the truth, no matter the cost, no matter the pain. The road stretched on, dark and uncertain, a reflection of the path my life would now take, a path I would walk alone if I had to, armed with the knowledge that I deserved better, that I would find a way to heal, to rebuild, to reclaim my life from the ashes of this betrayal.